Hey guys, Matthew here. In this video, I want to talk to you about a plugin in Rhino called Weaverbird. Now, we talked about in a previous video that having a plane is kind of a bad idea because one side is facing up and the other one's facing down. Real-world objects have thicknesses, and computer graphics, especially game engines, have been designed to really want to deal with solid objects where possible. So this is what this video is about. Now, I know I was a student too one day that this kind of geometry is very common in your work in the kind of the testing stages, and it might be quite hard to get rid of it all very, very quickly. So I'm going to talk to you about a really good mesh offset tool that can be imported into Rhino. Now, you'll all notice that when you have a curve that has some sort of sharp angle on it, that if I offset it this way, it's kind of fine, but if I offset it that way, I can get some sort of undesirable results. So if I make that number a little bit smaller, I might get a worse result. But it can do some weird things, and we've all seen it. So I'm going to talk to you about a plugin that I'm just going to show you how to download called Weaverbird. So if we type Weaverbird, Grasshopper, don't worry about the Grasshopper side of things. We're not using that compatibility, but I'm just going to type in Weaverbird Grasshopper and click on Weaverbird Topological Mesh Editor, and then it'll take me to this page. If I then go and click on this download link right here, I'll be able to download the software finally. So if I just click this download button, it'll download the plugin, and then I can just install it. You'll have to close all versions of Rhino to get it to work. So I've already done it, and if you do it, you should have a toolbar appear with the Weaverbird stuff in it. If it doesn't appear, just right click, show toolbar, scroll all the way down and choose Weaverbird. And then these buttons here will appear. So now that that's installed, I'm going to show you how to use the one component we want. Weaverbird does a lot of things, but we only want it to do one very specific thing. So I'm going to make a plane that's 10 by 10. If it was a cube, it'd be 10 by 10 by 10, as we all know. And I'm going to rebuild it just to get some complexity into the geometry. So I'm going to turn the points on. I'm going to move them up. I'm going to move them down. I'm going to get them at a weird angle so we begin to get some actual crazy double curvature going down. And of course, because I never get to use the command, I'm going to twist it, because twist and shout. Yeah, baby. Voila. So we've got this kind of crazy shape, and I'm going to mesh it, because Unreal and game engines use meshes, and NURBS is really only used by a very select set of softwares. So I'm going to mesh it by typing in mesh, and it'll give me a series of options. Now, if you have something super curvy, you might want to bump that up. If you have something super flat, you might want to pump it down. This is a moment where you get to choose and decide how to manage your poly count. And I'm just going to go OK, and I've got a nice clean mesh. The mesh is super, super clean because it's all quads. If I meshed that again, and I went to fewer polygons, and I click on the mesh, that number is effectively calculating, how many faces I have on this object to describe it. So that slider allows you to control how much fidelity and curvature the object has. So be very, very wary of how many polygons you put onto a particular object. Now, the command I'm going to use is this button on the toolbar, thicken mesh, but to call that in the command line, we type WB for Weaverbird and then thicken. So I'm just going to press OK, and it will automatically thicken it, which you may or may not want. So with this command, it's always best to just use it without anything selected, and then you can change these settings. So by default, replace is set to yes, and I think the distance is set to 0.2. So I've just set that back to the default, and if I click on my mesh object and go OK, it will now offset it by 0.2 units. And my original object is still there. Great. So that's the command, right? It's actually just a really good offset tool. So if you're having problems with the Rhino offset tool, this method of offsetting should have some better results. And then we can export this into Unreal and begin to use it without worrying about what side of the object I'm looking at. So that's pretty much all that you need to know about the Weaverbird tool. You have to install it. You type in WB thicken to call it. You can set its distance. You can set its offset algorithm. Don't get too worried about that. If one of them is not working too well, try one of the others, and replace yes, no. Will effectively just delete the input or not. And that's the Weaverbird tool. So that's all for this video, and I'll see you in the next video. This project was supported by a UTS Widening Participation Strategy, First Year Experience Grant, funded through the Australian Government Higher Education Participation and Partnership Program. The videos were produced by Matthew Austin and Adrian Taylor.